down to dinner and they asked little Junior Rabbit, "What did you learn in school today?" He said, "I learned how to multiply." Read into that anything you want. I'm not giving you any hints. Give me a favor and kill the door. Yeah, thanks. All right. Well, how was your trip? You liked it? Good, good, good. Have you ever ridden a streetcar like that before? No? Well, now you have, right? You know what? You're a lucky little girl. Now, this is a different kind of museum where we make the old things work again and then run them so that you can experience what it was like to ride a 1930s trolley car. And 1930s wasn't so long ago when I was born, but gee, it's sure a long time ago now. But please stay off the track, sweetie. And there's a reason why. I don't want her getting her foot caught in the slot there for the flange and getting her foot twisted and falling down.
It will happen. It will happen. If we let her run around long enough.
I know what the odds are. Don't remind me. No, we're really terrified about people getting hurt up here. It means a lot to us. And we do have a remarkable accident record. It's near zero. And matter of fact, in about the 16 years that I've been here, let's go back to 1886. 1886, yeah. That's when the first electric trolley car ran in America, in Montgomery, Alabama. It wasn't very successful. They were out of business in no time flat. They didn't have the technology really perfected yet for a citywide system, and the thing sort of fell apart by itself. But 2 years later in Richmond, Virginia, the electrical genius Frank J. Sprague put together a full-fledged trolley system, and just to prove that it would work, he ordered all the cars out of the car house and put on a track in a single line and dropped the trolley poles. Then he said, everybody put their poles up at once. Of course, everybody waited for a fuse to blow out with all the draw on electricity, and the fuses worked. And everything else on the system worked. And from that point on, we've had electric railways operating in cities. Not always in all cities, but we've had them. Let's go forward to 1906. That was about the height of the building of electric railways in this country. Streetcars in the cities and interurbans in the countryside, and suburban type cars in between. Then we go forward to 1916, World War I. Woodrow Wilson was president. He was very pro-labor. He encouraged collective bargaining and collective bargaining agreements, and labor costs began to go up. But the franchises mandated a low fare, like maybe a nickel a ride, and it would take the city councils a full vote to raise it to 6 cents, and they had to listen to the voters after that. Then we go to 1926, which was the last year in which the electric railway industry in America was still able to make money. And the money they made was about comparable to today's bank interest rates on a passbook account. Like, not much. So you think of later years, well, the automobile killed. Well, the automobile had a lot to do with it. In 1926, there were abandonments already. And we have some stuff in our collection. They're basket cases, but even in those years, they were obsolete and being junked. Then we go forward to another 20 years, 1946. World War I has ended. We've defeated the Axis powers. We're Americans. We can do anything. Watch us. Yeah. And one of the things we can do is get the automobile industry going again. Remember, the whole generation has passed by the Great Depression, not being able to afford to drive an automobile, let alone buy one. World War II, you could afford it, but you couldn't buy one. They weren't available. Tire rationing, gas rationing. By 46, automobiles that were still running were ready for the junk pile. The street railway equipment was ready for the junk pile. And Congress in '44 passed a very important piece of legislation called the GI Bill, with those fantastic guaranteed loans for returning veterans, those free college educations, which in those days were really valuable. A college education was almost a passport to a better paying job. Sadly, that's not always the case anymore, but, and those veterans earned it, by the way. They didn't just wear a silly suit for a couple of years and then get a free loan. They earned it the hard way. But what it meant, what it meant was it stimulated the domestic economy to convert from wartime to peacetime. And one of the major industries was automobiles. And with it came the peripheral industries, road building, concrete, steel, tires, and all kinds of things. And people bought new automobiles. And the returning veterans took their war bonds, which they had saved over 3 years of war. I mean, if you're on a destroyer out there at sea, what are you going to do with your paycheck anyway? Buy war bonds, so what? Okay. Then they came home, and they wanted to own a home, which their families had never owned before. They always leased or rented and everything else. And so here you have the city. We're going to call it My Town, USA. And we're going to call this Your Place, USA. And the guy wants to get from your place to my place. Sure. The shorter way is out this way, but it's up to you.
That's okay. I don't want to run through you.
And so this was the only place there was undeveloped area to build a suburb. So they take over 600 acres of a farmer's land, pay him for it on the GI Bill, and then convert it to housing. But the road was a narrow 1.5 lane country road. So they got the taxpayers to foot the bill for a paved road from here to there. And 46, the government passed the first of the gas tax laws. And so even though there had been a little trolley car line running from my place to your town, it was worn out. And it was privately owned. They didn't have the capital to rebuild or restore or upgrade. Besides, the tracks only ran to here. So they gave up the ghost. The federal funding built a freeway. And the rest is history. In a few years, the freeway was obsolete. You had to widen it to 4 lanes. Now it's 6 lanes. And at 5 in the afternoon, same old story. How long can we continue to widen the freeway? We don't have the money for it anymore. Already, the gas tax only provides 60% of the funding for our highways and roads. The other 40% is out of the general fund. So when we talk about spending federal money for infrastructure, we're already doing it. And I'm going to say no more because of who's occupying the White House, and I'm in uniform and I can't be political. But you get the picture. We're already spending for infrastructure. We've been doing it for years, and we're probably going to keep on doing it. That's the story of life. So what we have today in this car house and the other two, hope you don't mind my drinking on the job. What we have here is a collection of equipment, hopefully to reflect an earlier day and age, a time when life was different, America was a different country. When most of these cars were built, women did not have the constitutional right to vote. It was a states' rights issue. Montana allowed ladies to vote. California did. Most states did not. Some states still had in their state constitutions that you had to be a property owner to vote, because only those with property who have an interest in the area should be voting. The peasants, why should they vote? They're illiterate anyway. And only those with means were allowed to vote. School children went to school till about the 6th or the 8th grade. And then they left school and went to work. 6 days a week in factories, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And they didn't keep their pay. They brought it home, gave it to their parents for their support. Different world, different day and age. So today we got to look back in time. And I think of this car house not only as a state-of-the-art building, which it is, but also as a time machine, taking us back in time. And we're going to start by pressing the button on the time machine. Bzz, we're now back in 1895. Let's take a walk. Today we like to talk about recycling. Nothing new. Railroads were doing it long before we even thought of the word. This car, for example, was built in 1895 by a small independent railway in Alameda County called the California and Nevada Railroad, with the intention of running from Oakland to Reno. Well, you ever hear of champagne ideas and the beer income? This was it. The railroad got as far as Orinda and ran out of money. Okay.
Sounds like the bullet train.
You make the bullet train look good.
Oh, shit.
Because they did it with private money. Oh, yeah. Hey, in those days, you didn't go ask the government for money. They told you to drop dead. You want to make money on the railroad? Go ahead. Make yourself rich for life. Leland Stanford can do it. You can do it. But don't come to us. But it's all right for the government to give the Central Pacific and Union Pacific millions of acres of land. Yeah, that's a different story. This was a wooden passenger coach built for that California-Nevada Railroad, and it ran until about, shortly after 1903, when there was an amalgamation of independent railways in Alameda County to form what would be known as the Key System. The Key System was a modal transportation network. It was really a transportation factory. They had a huge shop area in Emeryville, and they owned ferry boats, which took people from San Francisco across the bay to the ferry slips on the Oakland side, where people would get aboard big interurban cars to take them on a 3-mile trestle over the shoal water of Oakland, then to either Oakland, to Piedmont, or to Berkeley, and then back down to the ferry boat again. Looks sort of like a skeleton key, doesn't it? Well, that became their theme, their logo. They had competition. There were still other railways, Southern Pacific, Oakland, Antioch, and Eastern, later Sacramento Northern. So they said, this is the key system to take, the key route to ride. Yeah, this is the key route. The name stuck, later became the corporate name. It's not the end of the story, because in 1911, the key system needed an overhead line car to service the overhead wires and carry 600 volts direct current to operate their railway system. That's what we operate on, 600 DC. Don't climb on top of the cars. You might find it kind of hot. So, once again, we go back to this earlier day and age, and we find ourselves asking about recycling, making do. What do you do with an old obsolete wooden passenger coach? It sits there in the yards. And then they, superintendents put their heads together, gee, we need an overhead line car to service those wires. Having some guy get on ladders on top of a flat car is not always a good idea. It's unsafe. It could cost money. Yeah, that's the problem. So they took this old car, took it into the shops, jacked her up, took out the trailer trucks, put in motorized trucks, air tank for the air brakes, put a trolley pole, put up a pantograph to collect the electricity off the wire, took out all the seats, got a hatch on either bulkhead on either side of the car, fitted out with workbenches, tools, and made a rolling electrical tool shop out of her. And although built in 1895, she still runs and is still in service. And it came out a little while ago to repair some overhead wires. And believe it or not, this car has actually been across the Bay Bridge a few times. Because when they had the electric railways on the lower deck of the Bay Bridge, they had to service the wires. This car helped string the wires, helped take them down. So this is a case where recycling is typical of railroads, but not typical of everyday life until recent years. Now we think nothing of saving those bottles and cans. I do. But I remember when saving bottles and cans was kind of novel. And growing up in San Francisco, going through the park and picking up the old Coke bottles for 2 cents each, well, hey, that was a good idea. 3 of those Coke bottles bought you a 5-cent Hershey bar. You can actually get a Hershey bar for 5 cents. That's how old I am. Really old. Well, let's take another look. Another case of recycling, but no less novel, is this former boxcar on the Sacramento Northern, which was converted into a caboose. It seems that the railway was told by the state of California, you've got some wooden cabooses there. I don't know what the plural of caboose is, or it's caboose or caboose or whatever. All I know is the plural of spouse is spice? No, forget it. Okay. And the state told them in no uncertain terms, steel underframes for safety. Well, that costs money. They didn't have any money. They were broke most of the time. So imagine the manager putting their heads together. Got any ideas? Well, there's our old box. Okay. The guy would say, well, we got that old boxcar we're not using. Can you do anything with it? And the reply would have been, can do. Can do. You don't hear can do much anymore. Those of us of a certain age well remember can do. Translated, it means we are Americans. We can do anything we put our minds to. Watch us. Okay. So you can do something with it? Yeah, can do. Then go do it. Don't go get me 3 bids from this and don't go asking for a federal handout. Just do it. So he took it into the shops. They sealed up the center hatch. They noted the car had outside steel bracing so it would have a flush interior. Ah, that'll work just fine. And they put in benches, which underneath were tool chests with lids on them, so the crew could unroll their sleeping bags and spend the night on the car. They didn't have motels everywhere. Potbelly stove where they could fix a meal for themselves, and endless pot of coffee always going on there for the crew. Cut some windows so you could see. Cut a hole in the roof, put a cupola on the top. That's where the rear brakeman sat, looking out the window, checking for overheated journals before the days of roller bearings. And he could stop the entire train by pulling the emergency cord. And voila! Brand new caboose, steel underframes, and what did it cost the company? Well, the men were still already on the payroll. They didn't cost any more than they did before. Little material here and there, some paint, renumbering the car. Brand new caboose. Yeah, we still use her on occasion, and she's fun to ride on behind one of our electric locomotives. So if you come up on a day like Members Day or something, take a ride in the caboose. Mm-hmm. This car, switching gears entirely, is It was built by Pullman, the company that built those fabulous private cars and those fabulous passenger trains with luxury travel, named trains like the 20th Century Limited, the Daylight, the Starlight, and all those. Yeah, the only way to fly. This car was so important that it carried a name, not a number. You were somebody if you rode the Circumnavigators Club. It's a self-contained facility. It has facilities for daytime seating, nighttime sleeping. It has a galley for cooking meals with a stove and an oven, not a light bulb. Take that, Amtrak. And when you went in to dine, you sat down at a table with white linen tablecloths and napkins, real silver cutlery, silver vases with fresh cut flowers. Maybe you take your order, sir. And how would you like your steak? And you were served on railroad company china. In this case, it would be Pullman china. And you would have Pullman napkins. Luxury for those who could afford it. If you couldn't afford it, there was coach getting the other train. Who could afford it? Politicians, famous people, inherited wealth. Yeah. And in 1932, no less than the governor of New York himself chartered this car. He was on a campaign trip to the eastern states. And it must have brought him good luck because later that year, the governor of New York, the Honorable Franklin D. Roosevelt, was elected president. Oh, and I love to amuse the children. I said, now, would you like to touch the railroad car that once carried the President of the United States? Can I? Really? And then the next kid goes, the next kid goes, ah. But hey, kids, they should have some fun at a museum. Remember when you used to go to a museum, don't you touch anything, you're going to catch it when you get home. You know? No, we let kids touch them. Let's go. Hey, Harry, wake up. We got company. Harry, wake up. We got company. Well, meet Harry the hobo. I think he had a little too much moonshine.